Until now in the Maimer we learned about the idea of Matan Torah, that in order to receive the Torah down here, the Torah is spiritual, the Torah is the most spiritual, and it's coming here into the fully physical world, and the way to do that is the way that we can connect two things which are polar opposites is through something that's higher than both of them. And that's higher than both of them causes them both to lose that which defines them and specifies them as something specific. And in this case, when we bring down the essence of Hashem, then both the definition of the lower and the definition of a higher lose their definition and they can come together. In mitzvahs, the Rebbe explained, and as well as in Torah, there are all these three things. In mitzvahs, we have the idea of three ways of doing a mitzvah, that a person can do a mitzvah for the physical aspect of it, because that's what we do, that's the body of the mitzvah, just because that's what's done. Then a person can have the chayas, the excitement, the neshama of the mitzvah, that comes from the fact that he wants to connect to Hashem. There it's defined to his spiritual aspect. Then he can do the mitzvah because that's what Hashem wants. And there's no difference, there's no definition, not of the physical and not of the spiritual, but merely because this is what Hashem wants. In the mitzvahs themselves, there are these three aspects because the mitzvahs were given down here in order to refine the world. And as they're refining the world, they cause a person to do the mitzvahs in the physical essence. Then the mitzvahs are the will of Hashem. The mitzvahs are connected to Hashem, and therefore they connect a person to Hashem to the extent that he's able to live with it, that it sustains him. The spirituality of the mitzvahs actually sustain him and give him chayas, give him an excitement in the mitzvahs. Then there's the higher aspect of mitzvahs, the fact that it's the will of Hashem. And in that sense, the will of Hashem, that's all there is, that's all that exists, that's what Hashem wants. Even after a person becomes an existence in order that there should be someone to whom to command to do the mitzvahs, his entire existence is just the fact that he's able to be the one that can fulfill the will of Hashem. In Torah, then we said, there's also these three aspects. Sometimes a person can learn Torah. What pushes a person to want to learn Torah? One thing that can push a person to want to learn Torah is the fact that it's intellectual. That's the natural tendency of the person, that he loves to study intellectual things. Then there's the higher aspect, that he learns Torah because it connects him to Hashem. That's the spiritual, the neshama. That's what pushes him to learn Torah. Then there's the fact that the Torah is one with Hashem. There it's not his physical existence, not even his spiritual existence. It's just that is one thing with Hashem, and therefore he grabs Hashem because that's what Torah is. And those three aspects are in Torah. The fact that Torah is intellectual, the fact that Torah was given to us down here, and it makes sense, and it's an intellectual idea. The fact that Torah is one with Hashem, and the fact that Torah is the will of Hashem, Anoichi. In the laws of learning Torah, when a person learns Torah in order to know what to do, that's the physical aspect. He's learning it for a motive of knowing what he should do in the physical world. When he learns Torah in order to connect to Hashem, that's the spiritual aspect. He's learning Torah, that's the idea Torah, to know the entire Torah, that's what connects him to Hashem. That's also limited, because once he knows the entire Torah, he did it. Then there's the mitzvah of learning Torah. It doesn't matter how much one learns, there's always the mitzvah of learning Torah. Higher than that, even the Rebbe says, is that even the mitzvah of Torah is a mitzvah to the person. Then there's something that's even deeper, Torah itself. Even when a person is not obligated to learn Torah, he grabs Torah at every possible moment, even when according to the laws of Hilchas Talmud Torah, he's exempt at this moment from learning Torah. Now the Rebbe continues that when is there the full connection of the physical and the spiritual? When is there the aspect of what Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah down here, what it's meant to accomplish? When does this happen? When a person learns Torah fully lishma, for the sake of Torah itself. Not only because in this case he doesn't have his physical definition, he doesn't have even the spiritual definition. There's only the Torah which is one with Hashem. which therefore that means it gets rid of the definition of both physical and spiritual, so that now they're able to come together, which that's the whole idea of connecting the Torah, bringing the Torah down here. In addition to this, there's a higher idea. The fact that the unlimited Torah has an effect on the limited person, that it affects the person in his limitations, that he should leave his limitations and connect to the unlimitedness of Torah. That's the idea of connecting higher and lower fully. In fact, even more than that, when Torah is just merely unlimited, that's still the spirituality of Torah, that's Torah the way it's up there. But when the unlimitedness of Torah is able to affect on the limited person and cause him to go out of his limitations, that's the ultimate of Matan Torah, of receiving the Torah down here, of connecting the unlimited and the limited, of causing the idea of Torah, which is unlimited, to cause him to actually be involved and affect the physical world. Now the Rebbe continues even more, that this is the reason why Kabbalah Torah is dependent on Mesiras Nefesh. We asked earlier in the beginning of the Maimer, Torah is about learning Torah here in the world. Torah is about doing mitzvahs here in the world. Why is it dependent on Mesiras Nefesh? And even if it's dependent on a person's readiness to give his life up, but nevertheless the readiness was there already by Matan Torah, why does there need to be the Mesiras Nefesh that came specifically in the time of Purim in order to accept the Torah? So let's try and understand again, and once again go through the idea of what is Matan Torah and what is Kabbalah Torah. Matan Torah is Hashem gave the Torah from up there that it should come down here into the world. Kabbalah Torah is that a person down here is able to accept it until it actually becomes one with him. He can contain and internalize that which is in Torah. And as we explained when we started learning this Maimer, that in the time of Matan Torah, the Jewish people had a Matan Torah from above, but they weren't yet Kalim, they couldn't receive and contain the Torah. The Torah didn't become part of them. The whole idea of Matan Torah is that Kabbalah Torah, that a Jew becomes a vessel to receive and accept the Torah. Similar to what it's brought down in Chassidus with regards to Yaviu Levush Malchus, Asher Lavash Baya Melech, Visus Asher Rachav Alav HaMelech. What's the Levush Malchus, the royal garment that the king wore? That means the king is Hashem. At the time of Matan Torah, Hashem put on a garment in order that he should draw himself down into the world. Sus is a horse. The horse is the Kalim, which is both from above and from below, the fact that it can actually be received in the world and become internalized in the world. When a thief is robbing, he's breaking into a house in order to steal, he knows that Hashem exists. But it didn't affect him, it didn't change him. At the time of Matan Torah was a Chilul Lases. Hashem began the process of giving the Torah down here into this world. But the Vekibel, the acceptance that it should become one with the world wasn't able to be yet then. Because the world wasn't one with Torah. Specifically at a time of Mesiras Nefesh, when the Jewish people gave their lives up, not just potentially, but practically for an entire year, they didn't think even a thought of changing their Yiddishkeit. That Mesiras Nefesh of being ready to go out of themselves totally, that is what's needed in order to make the Torah be able to affect the person and become one with the person. And that's why they needed then the practical Mesiras Nefesh. And this is also the reason why the Mesiras Nefesh that had to be done then had to be the Mesiras Nefesh of Purim, more than the Mesiras Nefesh of Chanukah. The Mesiras Nefesh of Chanukah was a spiritual Mesiras Nefesh. On Chanukah, the Jewish people were under a gzeira. There was a decree not to learn Torah, not to do mitzvahs. No, so a Jew decided he's not going to listen. He's going to learn Torah and do mitzvahs. It didn't necessarily have an effect. It's not something that came from the physical existence of a Jew. On Purim was much more than that. Nobody asked them to give up their Yiddishkeit. Nobody wanted them to give up their Yiddishkeit. The Jewish person, the physical existence of a Jew on his own was one that was totally batel. That there was a gzeira, there was a decree then that he shouldn't be able to exist. He had a way to save himself, and the Torah affected him that he shouldn't. But the practical idea of his nothingness, of the fact that the physical world and the spiritual world are both nothing, that all came as a result of the practical existence that there was. That's what it means to give the Torah. And that's also why it had, the Maamer mentions that at the time of Purim, they were on the lowest level, not just physically, but also spiritually. Not just spiritually, but also physically. And we asked the question in the beginning of the Maamer. For the giving of the Torah, what's important is their status spiritually, their spiritual status. That's why the question is that at the time of Matan Torah, when they were in a spiritual high, they should have been able to accept the Torah. At the time of Purim, when they were in a spiritual low, they shouldn't have. Why does he mention in the Maamer the physical status? And for this, the Rebbe explains that he's hinting that actually the answer and the reason why the Jewish people were able to accept the Torah, specifically in the time of Purim, because at that time, physically, their physical existence on its own, in addition to their spiritual existence on its own, didn't exist. So taking this now to a practical level, and connecting it with the question that we asked in the beginning of the Maamer, that it's a pellet, makes no sense. How do we accept the Torah? Accepting the Torah isn't just when we are on a very high level, physically or spiritually. Accepting the Torah means enabling the Torah of Hashem to become one with us down here, so that it's Hashem and that's it. There's not, just like we explained in the ways of doing the mitzvahs, there isn't me, there isn't my physical existence, there isn't my spiritual existence. I'm not learning Torah for the physical reasons, for the spiritual reasons. It's Hashem, and that's all that exists in my world. In order to be able to do that, there had to be a reality, not just where a person was on a high when he was on a very special level. Because if he's in a level, then that's defined and it's limited to spirituality. Here it has to be that the spiritual and physical become one. Here it has to be that the physical person down here becomes a keli, he becomes a vessel that can contain and that can become one with the Torah. And in order to do that, there needed to be Mesiras Nefesh. There needed to be the aspect of not me. Not the aspect of me, the aspect of not me. When there's not me, the non-existence of a Jew, both from the physical existence and from the spiritual existence. Then there's the place for the essence of the Torah, for the essence of Hashem that can cause physicality and spirituality to become one until it affects the person and changes the person, so that the person becomes totally one with Hashem. That causes also his learning Torah to be, because it's Hashem and that's it. He's doing mitzvah because Hashem and that's it.